Welcome back, tuning into this morning's video. I'm going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days. I did a video yesterday, of course, talking about the same sort of time frame. It still looks like it's going to turn very unsettled, or stay quite unsettled, and become really quite cool. In fact, maybe the word cold would best sum up early next week, when we're going to get a real northerly push. Very early on in the season, of course, but it could bring some wintry showers into northern parts of Scotland, would you believe? Anyway, before I get on with that, just want to talk about the advertised best green keyword ads on my page is at gasworthvids.com. If you roll your cursor over green keywords, they're going to display ads, but if you click through the word, you'll go to the advertised website, and when you do that, you're supporting gasworthvids.com. Thanks very much for doing it. So, starting off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts, and we've got the ECMWF on the left. The GFS is on the right. We had a look at these yesterday, but they're just really confirming the same idea that we had yesterday, which is that we've got an area of above average heights out in the Atlantic for 8 to 10 days' time, and we've got low pressure sitting to the east and the northeast of the country. There's an anomalous trough around Scandinavia and stretching down into central parts of Europe. A jet stream is coming across the Atlantic, something like this, and then diving southwards around that trough before ridging or rising northwards around the ridge, sitting across central and western parts of Russia. So we're basically on the cool side of the jet. If you're on the northern side of the jet, you're on the cool side of the jet, so we're within cool air, and we're more or less under a trough of low pressure, which will be keeping it really very unsettled. Now, this area of high pressure from the Atlantic is trying to ridge in, and eventually, as we get through probably towards the last week or so of September, I think the high pressure will probably ridge in and settle things down, but it could be a slow old process. This is a very deep trough sitting to the east and the northeast. It could take a very long time to get rid of that, to be honest. Now, have a look at the GFS, which is over here on the right. It's the same idea, really, with the ridge again sitting out in the Atlantic. The trough is to the east and the northeast of the country, perhaps not quite as deep as it is on the GFS, but never on the ECMWF, I should say. This is the GFS. Nevertheless, the idea is still the same, which is that the jet stream's rising around the ridge in the Atlantic, then it dives southwards through the British Isles and around this trough of low pressure sitting to the east and northeast of the country before it rises up again around the ridge sitting over western parts of Russia. So again, the idea is that we're on the cool side of the jet. We've got the trough to the east, maybe just further east than the ECMWF, with more of an influence from this ridge in the Atlantic. But it's the same idea, which is that it's pretty cool and quite unsettled as well. So if we have a look at the GFS temperature ensembles, these are for the upper atmosphere, but they are useful for low down on the surface. The red line is where we should be at this time of year, this thick red line, that's where we should be. All members of the ensemble are below that red line at the moment, so it is cooler than average. We're going to see temperatures rising up a little bit through the course of this week. This could get warmer for a time, associated with an area of low pressure. It's going to have quite a extensive warm sector, but I don't think that's going to last too long, to be honest. As we get through towards the weekend and the start of next week, we're going to find the temperatures dipping away, and we're going to go substantially below average. Look at this, as we get through to around the 16th to say the 19th of September, we're going to have several days of really quite cool weather indeed, very cool conditions, before again the temperature ensembles probably rise up a little bit and it turns a bit warmer as we get through towards the last 10 days to week of the month. Now, this could be associated with that ridge of high pressure in the Atlantic finally starting to push in, but don't go running away with the idea this will be a heat wave. It'll just be a bit of an increase on the very cool temperatures that's coming up early next week. The precipitation spike showing that we've got quite a bit of precipitation to come this week. We have got some rainfall to come as we get through to around the 19th, though things perhaps start drying off. That's as that ridge of high pressure from the Atlantic probably tries to move in, but generally it is quite an unsettled looking week coming up. The temperature anomalies for the next week, taking us from the 10th to the 17th of September, show that we're going to be cooler than average. Well, near normal actually down in the far southwest, but generally most parts of the country in these pale blue colours, so that's slightly cooler than the average. Very cool conditions, much of Central Europe, by the way, France, the Low Countries, Germany, temperature anomalies there coming out to well below average. You really have to go to the east and the northeast of Europe, where we've got that ridge of high pressure, of course, for the warm temperatures, and down across Spain and Portugal, summer does still go on down there, but for many central and northern parts of Europe, autumn has well and truly arrived. For the precipitation anomalies for the coming week, well, the far south and southwest in these yellow colours probably having slightly drier than average conditions from the 10th to the 17th of September, but most places actually are going to be near normal, or for the north or the northwest a little bit above normal, but certainly quite an unsettled week coming up away from the far south and southwest. So have a look at the charts. First of all, we'll have a look at the GFS model. This is the chart for Sunday. It's this area of low pressure around Iceland that we're interested in for this period, because that could really deepen like mad as we go through towards the 16th, Monday the 16th. It's going to deepen like mad, throw a cold front down across the country, and much cooler air is going to follow that southwards as the isobars are backing away to the north. We're going to start to pull down some proper Arctic air. That cold front could be quite active, bring quite a band of heavy rain across the country on Monday the 16th. But as we go through to Tuesday the 17th, look at this, we're in a real northerly wind. If you follow the isobars back, well, they go about as far north as it's possible to go, actually. The isobars are going virtually off the chart, right up to the centre of the North Pole. So that's proper Arctic air being driven southwards on Tuesday the 17th of September. And look at this. This is the thickness lines. Now, I've spoken about thickness lines before. They're basically telling us where the air masses are changing. So where we've got this 564 line here, that's basically where we've got summer. Where we've got the green 546 line there, that's where we've got autumn. And where we've got the blue 528 line, that is winter. When you're within that line, you're basically within winter conditions. And look at that, the 528 line is coming down into the north of Scotland. That is very unusual to see that in September. Now, it's probably a bit overdone, and once we get to the time frame, this will probably be restricted more towards Iceland, but it just goes to show you how potentially cold for the time of year, not potentially cold in terms of the winter, of course, but how potentially cold for the time of year for September this northerly wind could be. It could well be driving in wintry showers into northern Scotland. By the way, if you want to know what the earliest date for countrywide snowfall is in September, the earliest I've been able to find is 1885. The 25th of September 1885 did report snowfall down towards the Midlands and possibly as far south as London, but that's controversial. It may have been hail for London, but you have to go back to 1885 to find fairly widespread snowfall across the country in September. Now, I don't think this will deliver widespread snowfall. It will probably be restricting wintry showers to the north of Scotland, but you're certainly going to know that you're in that northerly wind. As we get through towards the 18th of September, well then, the trough is starting to move towards Scandinavia. The ridge is trying to come in off the Atlantic, and eventually, as we saw on the height anomaly charts, once we get through to the 10-day period, Friday the 20th of September, we do start to bring that ridge in a little bit. That's still within quite cool air, so there'll be cold nights with mist and fog patches, but by day perhaps not too bad. Some sunny spells coming through. The ECMWF, does that bring the northerly down early next week? Well, there's the low pressure around Iceland on Sunday the 15th. Back again, pushes that cold front through on Monday the 16th. There's the winds backing around, or the isobars backing around to the northwest once again. As we get through towards Tuesday the 17th, actually we don't bring that northerly down. What happens is that another trough comes through. We're still within cool air, but we're bringing another trough through across the country, so we don't get quite the extent of northerly. We don't get the isobars backing right up to the Arctic Circle as we do on the GFS, but generally it's staying very unsettled and changeable through next week, and temperatures would be on the cool side, just not as cold as on the GFS. As we move through to Thursday the 19th and then on into Friday the 20th, it's the same idea of the ridge trying to build in, but I think we're still bringing weather fronts in actually up to Friday the 20th of September, so probably still bringing some cloud and outbreaks of rain. Finally, have a look at the GEM, the Canadian model. There's the low pressure around Iceland on Sunday. What does the GEM do with it? It sweeps that cold front through into Monday the 16th. Isobars go round to the northwest, so definitely a cool push coming through. Again, we don't get quite the northerly that we see on the GFS. We do not back the isobars back to the Arctic zone. So maybe the GFS is a bit overdoing that northerly. I think it is, and by the time we get through to early next week, I think we'll probably see that 528 line being restricted towards Iceland. But nevertheless, this is still cool and changeable for early next week. It's still very autumnal. Another area of low pressure comes through as we go through to the middle of next week, Wednesday the 18th. That will be bringing very wet conditions across many parts of the country. And then that low pressure moves through into the North Sea through Thursday the 19th, and we end up with this sort of northerly flow across the country, not backing it to the North Pole, but still very cool and changeable. And notice the GM is just bringing our old friend back, northern blocking. We've got some northern blocking re-emerging there. Of course, we know a lot about northern blocking from last winter. There it is, coming back. High pressure re-emerging to the north of Scandinavia and around Greenland, but is not very well supported from the other models, but certainly quite interesting that to see it coming back again after being absent through the summer, the re-emergence of high pressure in the northern latitudes. But what we can take from all of this overall is that it's going to be a very cool changeable period coming up. Could get a real northerly push later in the period through the start of next week, but I think the GFS is overdoing it. I'm not sure it's going to be quite the northerly wind that the GFS is going for, but nevertheless it's a cool and changeable period on the way, certainly going out to around the 20th, 21st of September. Then we may get a build of high pressure, settling things down for the final sort of stages of the month, but for the foreseeable future, which is next week to 10 days, very cool and changeable. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.